Hi and welcome to Find Your Magic. I'm Edward Pike.
And I'm Rob Sykes.
So this is a podcast that explores how it's never too late to actively live or pursue our magic, i.e. the things that we love to do and bring us the most joy. In each episode, we talk to a guest about their journey to finding and living their magic, the ups, the downs, the challenges, and the triumphs. Hi everyone, welcome back to the podcast.
Hello.
Hello Rob, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Today is my birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you very much. I won't tell you how young I am.
Thank you. Want to tell us more about the episode that's coming up, people?
The one that's coming up?
Oh, this one, I mean.
Yes. You mean while we're here?
Yes.
Yes, today we are talking to my friend Alexis Gregory. Alexis is a playwright, a performer, a director, and a producer. And his work explores queerness, identity, and the power of storytelling through unexpected LGBTQ plus narratives. That's a mouthful. His work is bold, it's thought-provoking, it pushes the boundaries, but it's also infused with lots of humour, heart, and connection. Alexis is somebody I've known probably for about 20 years now, I'd say. We met on the dance floor of one of the gay clubs in London that I was probably DJing at the time. And we were part of a group of friends who were very close and spent a lot of time twirling around the dance floors and having the time of our lives. It was a real pleasure to connect with him again and to hear his story, most of which I didn't know. So yeah, it was a really great conversation. I really loved it.
What I love about his work, I think I've only seen one of his shows, the one at the Glory in London. I remember which one that was. That was Riot Act? No.
That was the serial killer one.
That's
with
the
Johnny
one.
Woo.
That's the one, yeah. That he's always telling stories that are powerful and kind of unapologetic and really necessary. Kind of hard-hitting, but also funny and human. And his work is a great reminder of the power of telling these stories of visibility and representation. Why that's important. So we're very excited for you to meet Alexis and for you to hear his story. So without further ado, let's welcome our guest.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Alexis Gregory.
All right. Oh yes, by the way, do you want us to call you Alexis? Lexi?
Why don't you call me Alexis? I never introduce myself as Lexi anymore, but if people know me from then, like Rob, you probably do.
And it's funny, it's because it's really weird because I actually said to Ed, can you ask him what he would like to be called? Because I'm actually embarrassed because when we've been communicating, I'm like, I've known you so long, but I've not seen you for it was like, back in the day it was like Sexy Lexi, which I know I would never call you in this context. but and I was like, oh God, maybe it doesn't like being called Lex or Lex. Is it Lex? Is it Lexi? Is it Alexis? Because
I've gone back to Alexis, actually it was Luke Hope who used to call me Lexi. Right. He was the first person, and I was like 17 and I looked about 14. I feel like I'm a grown man now. I feel it's a little bit like a little chihuahua called Lexi, So if anyone calls me Lexi, I don't care. And even new people call me Lexi, but I would never introduce myself as that.
Right, great. Clear? Okay. Clear, yeah. From this point forward, we will refer to you as Alexis.
Yes, there we go.
Hi, and welcome to the Find Your Magic podcast. Yes, Alexis.
Hi, Rob. Hi, Ed. Thanks for having me.
So, we're going to dive straight in. Can you tell us the three magics you're going to be talking about today on the podcast?
Sure. So I am a playwright and performer. So my first magic is theatre making, being an artist and what that means. I guess we could link the three magics together. So my second magic would be communication and communicating with people. And again, what that means. And my third magic as an out queer independent artist would be how one leans into and fearlessly, or hopefully fearlessly, embraces that queerness and what that can mean.
Amazing, great. Okay. what does living your magic mean to you? What does it mean to be living your magic?
I think it's if you're lucky enough to be able to do what's important to you, what's maybe important to people around you, helping people, being yourself, having a rewarding life, whatever that may mean, whether it means spending time alone, spending time with family, spending time with your kids, if you have kids, being fulfilled in your work, living as freely as possible, hopefully not feeling trapped by many things that can trap us, financial worries, illness, all these things that if you're not struggling with those, great, that's something to be really grateful for.
Yeah, great. And so what's been your biggest challenge actually to living your magic?
I guess some of those things that we spoke about right at the beginning when I introduced what the themes were going to be, I think they were all challenging actually initially, pretty much. It was a challenge to be an artist. It was a challenge, or it is a challenge to be an artist. It's actually more challenging now than when I started out. It was a challenge to be queer or be gay, as it was called more at that time. It was a challenge, and is still a challenge, to be a queer artist as well. And how you can meld those things together. The challenges are different now. So I'm sure we'll talk about it, but the challenges of being a younger queer artist, the challenges of being a queer artist who has got established to a certain level, and where do you go next? What are you allowed to do? What are you not allowed to do? Which doors open to take you to the next level of your career? Which ones will still shut? All of those kind of things.
And the second one, the communication, has that been a challenge?
I couldn't say that I perfectly communicate all the time and always in my personal life, but as an artist, I realize communication is really important to me, and storytelling is important. And a lot of the things that I write about and create, which mostly are LGBTQ plus themed, but often quite abstract or perhaps unusual or out of the box concepts. I don't really try to do things that are too obvious. I try to surprise people. It's always a risk, and you hope that people will come along with you on the ride, because one minute I'm writing about gay serial killers and the next minute I'm writing about homeless queer kids. So it's, are people going to connect with this? Will they be interested? Am I doing my job correctly?
Yeah, great.
What's been the reverse of that? Is what's been your kind of biggest achievement?
I suppose it was becoming a playwright, and how that freed me, because I was a child actor. I started going to acting classes when I was 11, and then when I was 15, I got an agent and I started going to their acting classes, and then I started working professionally when I was 15. And I did that for a long time. And really, my career change was in my mid-30s. That's when I really became a writer. And when I got my first play on, even when it had just had a one-off reading, and Rob, I know you were very much around at those times.
Channel 4, was that Slap?
Yeah.
To Channel 4's headquarters.
Yeah, that was my second gig. So the first gig was doing a stage reading of that play at the theatre. Someone from Channel 4 was in and came and saw this pop-up theatre performance, which you came to, Rob.
Yeah, I did.
And from that point, I called myself a writer. Even when I did the first reading in the theatre a few months before, I never thought, am I a writer? Am I not a writer? It just felt right. That was what I called myself.
Yeah. I think it's a good point to start talking about your first magic then, your love for theatre making, right? And so if you maybe bring us back a little bit, at what point, how did that start in childhood?
It really was one of the, I wouldn't say the only thing I was interested as a child, but it was very prominent in my childhood. And actually, so was writing stories. So I would stand up and write stories, and I would read them out to the other kids at school in assembly. I created my own superheroes and wrote stories about them. And being in school plays was really important to me. And I had my weekend acting classes and my evening acting classes, and then I went to my acting class at my school, and then I went to the additional one at my school, and I was really happy I had 4 or 5 acting classes a week. And I think young kids were much less savvy then than they are now about how you follow that dream.
Oh,
And I had to really put the pieces together as like a 10 or 11-year-old. And I was phoning agents.
yeah. 10 or 11.
Yeah,
Wow.
That's super savvy.
I was. Yeah. And I also, about the age of 11, I got permission from a writer of a movie, a screenplay, to adapt it and put it on in my school, which I thought was, yeah, I negotiated it.
Was
And
was that so natural to you then? Was that like just the
yes,
thing to do? You were so
it was
clear, yeah.
completely natural, and I was completely fearless as a child.
Yeah.
And so I read this kid's book. I saw there was a movie based on it. I watched the movie. It was about a child spy. And then I found the production company who made the movie, and I said, "Can I adapt it for my school?" And then she said, "I'll get back to you." There was someone on reception, and it was Anthony Horowitz, who's gone on to be a really big writer.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh yeah, let the kid. He can adapt it. It'll be good for him." And so they sent me the screenplay, and I adapted it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, looking back again, it was just completely normal. And in fact, I've known Ricky Beadle-Blair for decades, and Ricky's a director and an actor and a big influence on me.
Is he?
And all my early plays came via Ricky and
Yeah.
his collaborator John Gordon. But I found out Ricky had done something really similar with Bugsy Malone and Alan Parker, and he'd got permission from Alan Parker to put Bugsy Malone on in his school like 30, 40 years earlier.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. I think performance was really important to me. I think it is to a lot of young people, and then it filters away and it goes away, but it didn't go away for me. You could say, was there, as a kind of trainee gay kid, was there something about performance that appealed to me? I certainly wasn't sporty. Was it that typical story of you go slightly into the fantasy world? Yeah, I didn't grow out of it, basically.
It's interesting because I had a similar childhood from a very young age. It was all about performing and the same thing,
Right.
school musicals, acting lessons. And I made a very pivotal decision at 16, which was not to take A-level drama, because
Right.
that decision was based on because I thought people would think I was gay. I didn't even know I was gay at that time, and that's one decision that if I could go back and change, and who knows how it would have turned out. I carry that as this big kind of regret in my life, because it was the one thing I lived for. Similar to how you were talking about it, was the only thing I absolutely loved to, and was really good at. And it wasn't like I was supported with it. I used to, my parents obviously paid for me to go acting lessons, but there was obviously some kind of disconnect between me pursuing it. So to hear that you were so clear at a very young age and followed it through, it was really quite.
Well, I didn't know that about you. So I thought you were going to say something about music, Rob. But I do know from being a child actor and being in that environment, and also years later, I taught kids. There is a point often where adolescent boys drop out of that because they want to impress girls. They want to be seen to be into the sports more. And again, that may be shifting and changing. Typically, as the kids in the acting classes got older, you'd find the boys reduced in terms of the numbers.
So would you say that's an image thing that happens around that age then? What you say, Rob, is I didn't want to be perceived as gay, and you're saying I wanted to be seen as doing football or X, Y, Z. Yeah, good question. Do you think that's an image thing that happens around that time?
Shame, I think, I would say. For me, it's shame.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I can't necessarily think of the examples right now, but I know I would have felt shame about appearing feminine or something like that when I was an adolescent.
Yeah.
You said that you were doing lots of different acting classes. So presumably your parents were encouraging of you pursuing this?
Yeah, my mum particularly. And I didn't come from a performing background or a wealthy background or an artistic family, but it was just something I wanted to do. And my mum used to take me across London to my Saturday morning acting classes on the train, and we'd stop off in Waterloo, and I'd have a nice little baguette, and then they'd like a nice little apple turnover, nice and hot from the little stall in Waterloo station. So it was like an afternoon out. So yeah, I really was supported in it, and I was supported in going to auditions on my own at 15, which probably now is illegal, but at the time no one really seemed to care. And going into Soho at the age of 15 and going to commercial castings in Greek Street, and so I was in that world suddenly.
Were there any kind of school friends that you had that were pursuing the same kind of dreams? Did you have any kind of peers that you shared the experience with, or were you like the only boy in your class or year that was actively pursuing this dream of
I was the only one. I think maybe some kids like doing it in the classes like I did, but also I was doing bits of TV and commercials and tiny little guest roles in TV. So in a way, I was marked out, and people knew that that was what I did. I was the creative kid.
And how did that evolve then after childhood school years, becoming an actor at the age of, was it 15 you said?
I guess I did my first proper job when I was about 15.
Yeah, how did that evolve then? What were the ups and downs of that journey?
There was probably maybe about 20 years of ups and downs. I left school at 18. I didn't go to university, and I left to be an actor. That also involved a lot of working in bars. But I always worked in bars because I knew there was an element of flexibility. And I worked in gay bars. I worked in the Box in Soho.
Yeah.
I worked in Rupert Street Bar when it first opened. I worked in Manto Bar before it became GAY. I did my gay community service. I did the rounds. I was working as a waitress in a cocktail bar for a real long time, but always acting. But it was always hard. It was hard. I would have to fight for roles. I was very twinky and kind of campy and quite feisty, and I was like a power twink. And I think a lot of people didn't know what to do with that, and I didn't know what to do with that, and I felt trapped by that. And there wasn't the work.
What kept you going then? What was the drive?
Just, I think, insanity. I just really believed, and I don't know how I managed to believe for so long. I don't, and I did big international commercials or guest part in this TV series, and then nothing, and lots of things that didn't missed opportunities and things that I couldn't get, and it wasn't the time. And it was a kind of a constant contradiction of being this quite kind of feisty, campy kid with like bright orange hair and blonde blobs in it. Like I used to have this tiger print hair that this Spanish queen used to do for me for free, and she'd take the pictures and I'd get the free hair.
Right.
And so being quite out there, but then also having to try and restrain that as well. And I used to actually get cast. There was a point, I think, in my 20s where I used to get cast in quite a lot of straight roles, but quirky straight roles. So I was like the quirky, nerdy boy that got the girl. I did quite a few of those.
Were you all singing, all dancing, or were you purely acting?
Just acting. Even now, I don't sing and I don't dance. And when I was younger, I would have thought, God, does that limit anything? But I really don't care now.
You knew your lane. You stayed in it.
Yeah, I don't care. If they want me to learn to sing or dance, they can pay me to pay the teacher.
Exactly. What is it
I'm
about?
fine.
What is it about the theatre or acting in this context that lights you up so much?
I've very much changed in that I don't really tend to audition as much. I'm waiting to hear back on a really exciting job at the moment, but I've slightly gone out of that world of being the hustling actor, which is what I was for like 20, 25 years. I went much more into kind of like an independent theatre world, which I'm actually really quite happy in. And what do I like about it? I really like audiences. I really like connecting with people. I like an exchange, a sharing of ideas. I like opening up conversations or being part of a conversation. I like the people I work with. I work with really extraordinary people all the time. And I like art. I'm an artist. I'm a theatre artist. So wherever I'm performing, and if I'm touring I had one play that we must have taken to about 30 or 40 theatres. I love going to a different theatre, a different city in the country, seeing the city for the first time, and then going to this amazing theatre and going, oh wow, so this is the theatre in Hull. Oh, this is the theatre in Birmingham. Oh, and I love all of that.
Yeah.
And to travel around and meet different people and meet different audiences, and it's very hard work, but it's very rewarding.
What would you say to someone who has that desire to be an artist in theatre or acting in generally? What would you say to them?
I would just get out there and do it wherever you can. It's very hard because you can spend a lot of time waiting for permission.
Yeah.
As an artist, I think probably as any kind of artist, and it's and I would always say as well, try to remember why you maybe got involved with this in the first place, because it's very easy to get that sucked out of you. You could get the joy sucked out of you. You could forget about the art and it all becomes about the business. It all becomes about the networking and the connections. And you also really have to look after yourself, because I think sometimes it's like being an athlete.
Were there any times when you were acting that you nearly gave up, or had you always remained totally focused on that end result of actually working as an actor?
There might have been times when I wanted to give up when I was younger, and people used to say, oh, you'll come into your own when you're a bit older, which did happen. I thought, I don't want to wait. Older? What's older anyway? 26? That's ancient. 22, like 4 years? I have to wait 4 years?
Tell us about the kind of the transition, if you like, if you want to call it that, from acting and becoming a playwright.
I was working very closely with Ricky's theatre company, Ricky Beadle-Blair, who I mentioned earlier, and he was writing the plays for these actors in the room, which is a real honour to have this amazing writer say, I want to write this kind of role for you. And Ricky was really instrumental, actually, in helping me embrace playing queer roles. When 25 years ago, when he started writing these plays that I was in, there wasn't queer roles around, and I was actually playing gay roles that were pretty humiliating, actually, like bit parts in TV, and it'd be so cliched. You would know what the script was before you read it, and you were really just there as like a little bit of fun and a little bit of fluff. And so he really encouraged that in me, and I was talking to him for years about wanting to write a play, and he said, just do it, and you can do a 5-minute slot at my 50th birthday. And so I performed 5 minutes of a play that I wrote about a half Italian, half Greek gay boy growing up in northwest London who was obsessed with Madonna. It was autobiographical, just in case.
That was my next question.
I just thought I should clarify that. And then through a weird series of events, that became my play Slap, which he helped me put on. And that was in 2012. We first did the first performances, and it took 3 years to get the run. Right. So I did a pop-up in 2012 in the theatre. And then there was the Channel 4 thing, that was also 2012. I think we developed and did like a very short run in 2014, trying to get all the money, all the funding to do it. And then I finally got my first play on it in 2015. And I did think at that point, it's just not going to happen. It took 3 years. I thought, I'll never get this on.
Is the kind of getting funding the kind of the only route to realising that? It's not, but if you want to do it professionally, it really helps. Yeah. And it's like when I was saying about just do it, that's great. But also you have to be in a very privileged position to just do it. Can you afford to take 3 months and not earn any money? So it's very challenging at the moment. The world is challenging. Of course.
And arts funding do not remain steadfast in this current world. So it's very challenging. So I would say if anyone wants to do it, find a way to do it. But also the flip side of that is why do you have to make do? What you're doing is hopefully valuable. You need to have the resources.
Where does Riot Act come in? Because I know
Riot
that's the one
Act,
that people probably a lot of people would know you from Riot Act. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing that's the one that's so far had the most exposure.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm really pleased about that. To have a play that people like yourself say, that's the one that people know. Great. I'm really pleased. Riot Act was my 4th play.
Okay.
Yeah.
For the benefit of our audience that may not know what that play was about, do you want to just quickly just tell
Yeah.
us?
So Riot Act was my first solo play, and I was in it, and I played 3 gay men, 3 activists, 3 extraordinary people based on my interviews with them. So it was verbatim. I interviewed each guy for hours and made each character their own monologue out of their own words. And one was a very rare Stonewall survivor, because when I was creating the play, there were very few Stonewall survivors left. And unfortunately, Michael, the guy I'm talking about, died about a year ago, so he's no longer with us. And then the extraordinary drag queen Lavinia Co-op, a radical drag artist from the 70s, like street drag. I played her, and I played Paul, an AIDS activist.
Yeah,
Paul Burston. And yeah, some people said don't do it. Who wants to see a play about activism? Who wants to see a play about HIV and AIDS? Do people really want to see a play about Stonewall? But I did it. I thought I was crazy doing it. Like up until about 2 days before, I thought, how will I learn these lines? It's an hour long. What have you done? And I really thought I was going to have an earpiece and they were going to have to feed it through. But I managed to do it. And I did not expect it. Has toured the UK 4 times. I've done the West End. That was a big career highlight. Like a West End gala performance happened. Yeah. It's online. I get messages from people in different countries. It's being translated. Yeah, I've got one guy in Italy who's translated it, Massimo, and because the only other rights I've ever given to are to students or to like an LGBT theatre group, because the rights it all has to come back to me and I have to sign it off. So I'd signed off a couple of those, but Massimo's the first professional artist to do it. It is available to be performed in other countries if anyone else wants to translate it. Yeah, but so that's amazing. That's an honour. I did not expect that, and I think there's another play that's going to another country and being translated, a completely different play, but that's been on and off for years. So I don't know if that's supposed to be happening this year, but I don't know. I don't know.
Right. I think that moves us beautifully into your second magic, which you talked about being communication, connecting with the audience, and comedy maybe as well. So tell us a bit more about that.
I love performing and like doing this hard-hitting stuff, and for it to be really provocative and truthful and in your face. But I'm also a big comedy fan, and I know when I used to do my little plays at school, I used to be able to make people laugh, and I guess I was funny in my real life. I guess I didn't have any complaints. I think I was funnier before. I think I'm trying to retain that magic.
Oh, it's and there. Don't worry.
You've been worn down.
That's good.
Has life worn you down? Is that what you're saying?
No, your magic is like this lightness that you have. Me, I just smile, just listening and watching you.
Oh, that's good.
No, there's that.
Because we should tell the people that I made my little joke about the mime, and there was a sound delay, and I thought they don't think it's funny, and then they laughed 45 seconds later. But that was the sound. I was like, oh, I've still got it.
Just delayed now.
We had some
just delayed.
We had some technical issues at the beginning where Alexis was speaking and we couldn't hear him.
Yeah. So in all the plays, I write comedy. I would say I'm a comedy writer. And for me, it's such a powerful tool because I often write about quite hard-hitting things. And you need the comedy in these moments because I might be performing in a very small theatre sometimes and it's intense, but people like to laugh. And I really love making people laugh. It's incredibly intoxicating. And when I did Riot Act in the West End, there was like 500 people laughing. And that sounds different to 60 people laughing. Yeah. It was like a wall. It's amazing. It's amazing. And I just done like I was hired to act in Shakespeare, like a 70-minute version of a Shakespeare play, Antony and Cleopatra, and I got some really fun laughs there. But I don't think it was written that way, but I was able to find the funny, which I love doing. Yeah, made it funnier, and I always normally know when I'm writing a script where the laughs will come. I always know there's always 1 or 2 jokes that maybe don't work, and I think they will. And then there's always 1 or 2 points where people laugh where I actually never thought they would. But every night they laugh at that point, and I just hadn't thought of it in that way.
And is that something that were you trained? Have you taken any kind of training to be a playwright or a comedy writer, or is it just something that comes naturally to you?
So I went through a program with Ricky and John when I was developing Slap, like mentorship and rewrites, and here are the notes, and that's it. However, if I am developing a particularly complex play, I would work with someone like Ricky again, or a dramaturg, and I would work with them. It has to be someone I trust and know. If I feel that this is a complex script and I need feedback on it, I would work with that person. But I've never had a formal training as a playwright, and I've never had formal training for comedy. And it's either something you really can't teach it. And sometimes I've worked with an actor and I've thought, oh, I'll write these really funny lines for them, and sometimes it just doesn't work with them. Yeah, I don't think you can fake it. Yeah, I really don't.
And what do you think is the magic of like storytelling, comedy, communication? What's your experience? What's the impact on the audiences?
I think deep down, many of us, whether we know it or not, like stories. We are brought up on stories. We are told stories as children. We have gathered around campfires for thousands of years to tell stories. I think it's a real human desire. And again, that comes back to connection and these shared experiences. And that's why people talk about the latest Netflix series, because they get wrapped up in the story. And I think it's hard to make it work, but when it works, when it connects with people, it's really amazing. And I might be mentoring a young writer, and I said, what's the actual story here? You just have a theme in these 70 pages you've sent me. What's the story? It can have 5 plot points, but what's the story? And I think there's something tribal and ritualistic about sharing that. Yeah. And because I'm a big theatre fan and I work in theatre, I never know what's going to work really before it goes in front of an audience. So it's a risk. You can have an idea and it doesn't work. And I go to the theatre a lot and I go to be transported and I take a risk. There's an unspoken exchange going on between the audience and the performer, and I could be in the audience that night. Well, I want it to be amazing, and it's not always, but we're chasing it. We're chasing that. Please just let me feel something, or...
Yeah, nice. We mentioned risk there. Can you tell us more about risk? The sense of risk, of like when you're telling a story or receiving a story?
For me, it's... Are people going to understand? Am I doing it correctly? I've had to make some crazy decisions lately where work hasn't really been properly tested, and I've had to go in front of an audience with it because that's just how it's worked out. And also I've become less of a perfectionist. I've also gone, because I was a real perfectionist. Doesn't mean I've got lazy or sloppy, but I just also have to take the risk. With the risk, there is a chance you may fail. And I would rather look at a piece of art and think, okay, it didn't hit every single point, but at least they tried. At least they took a risk. At least I had those 2 moments that took my breath away, as opposed to something that was safe or thought that it was risky, but it wasn't.
Yes. That's a really good point, I think, because to really on our edge, on our kind of creative edge, and to create something that is new, and maybe that connects to new stories and strands and things that you might think of. The threads that you weave together different to like the theatre maker who would weave together very different threads, and you have to take a risk, right?
And to believe the audience will take the risk with you as well, because I don't always write things that are straightforward. I've just done a play called Smoke that we want to tour around the country. I'm working with an LGBT organisation called You Are Loved, and we're pairing up to tour the play and do a You Are Loved event. And doing that play in London was risky. It was about very challenging themes. I was sat next to the audience. I moved around. People didn't know what was going to happen next. At points, I didn't know what was going to happen next. It was like, and then that's going to be risky to take around the country, because I'm in a London bubble, and how will that translate around the country to different audiences? And it's a certain type of play. It's not going to appeal to everyone, but I have to say that I say that's fine. If I'm doing an interview to promote Riot Act, I always say, come see the play. You won't be disappointed. Everyone likes it. And that's not me being big-headed, but I'm confident enough to say that. But this new one, it's different. It's not for everyone, and that's fine. But that involves risk as well.
Nice. And also with the stories that you tell, right, the themes that you bring, which are hard hitting, I'm guessing that comedy is a way of going there in a
Yeah,
way that easier maybe or more palatable. Not that it needs to be more easier and more palatable, but that on a physiological level, when you're laughing, your body opens up. So automatically you're more relaxed and more open to just being
to
present.
release.
Yeah, exactly. Automatically as an audience.
Yeah, and it's about rhythm. It's
Yeah.
like a rhythm of life, and it's. I always remember someone was saying that June Brown, Dot Cotton from
Yeah.
EastEnders, who was a very experienced and very well respected actor, she said to a young actor, "Any scene you work on is like a piece of music," and I do believe that the rhythm, the pace, and that's where the comedy
Yeah.
comes in. That's where the drama comes in. It's literally the two classic drama faces. Those two symbols that you see on all those logos are a laughing face and a sad face.
Dot Cotton was named after my mum, by the way, as an aside.
You're kidding me.
No, because I grew up in Hackney from up until I was 9. I lived in Hackney, and the square that I lived on was called Facet Square, and that's what EastEnders Albert Square is based on. And back in 1979, when they very first started doing EastEnders, I remember them coming round, the BBC coming around and taking the casts of the square, etc. And all the original cast members in EastEnders, when it first came out in like the early 80s, were based on the original residents of Facet Square, which was obviously renamed Albert Square. So my mum is called Dot, and Dot Cotton's husband, who you never saw, was called Charlie. My mum and dad were
Yes.
Dot and Charlie, and my nan,
No.
yeah, my nan who lived like 8 doors down from us was called Ethel, and the original cast member had Ethel and her little dog. My nan didn't have a dog called Willie, but yeah, the original
Ethel and her
cast.
little Willie.
Yeah. So the original cast. So my mum said Dot Cotton was named after my mum. Not many people know that.
I am fascinated by that.
Which would
Because
make me Nick Cotton, right?
yeah, it would do. It would do. Nasty Nick.
Yeah.
So that was like, oh my goodness, Tony Holland and Julia somebody, really two really big famous established screenwriters who wrote EastEnders.
yeah?
But so EastEnders was very provocative when it started out. It had like a gay couple kissing in it and drugs and a single mum and a nervous breakdown. It was really edgy.
Yeah.
That's amazing, Rob. I never knew that.
Yes.
So before we move on to your final magic, what for you in terms of your storytelling, your that kind of topic of that aspect of your magic? Can you describe to us maybe a really profound moment that you had when you were doing that?
I would say, again, I guess maybe to go back to Riot Act, which is a play that has really touched people and it's very visceral. And I've got people who've seen it 5 or 6 times, and I have met the most extraordinary people through that play. And I've met people who've said that they never really grieved for the lover they lost to AIDS 30 years ago, and seeing this play has helped them. Or I'll meet a woman who she said, "Oh, I missed you when you were in Birmingham, so I've come down to London to see the play. I was on the AIDS wards as a nurse in the 80s, and I heard about this play." Or a like a mum who says, "This is my young queer kid. I wanted them to see the play." And we did a post-show talk in Crewe, which is near Manchester, and we all went from the theatre into the bar. And there was an older gay guy who got up and started talking, and I thought, oh God, how's it going to go? Because sometimes it can be a car crash.
Yeah.
He was extraordinary. He told me about being in prison for being gay in the 60s. And he stood up and he told this whole story. And he talked about how he was one of the younger guys in the prison, and the older guys made him search the floor for the cigarette butts and that they would smoke them. And he says that he saw a picture of the prison a couple of years ago and it looked the same as it had. This must have been ahead of 1967. It was extraordinary to meet someone who was imprisoned for being gay in this country, and they hadn't done anything wrong. It was illegal until it was partially criminalised. There was no inappropriate behaviour. It was two young men together.
Yeah.
And then he got up and he was just talked, and then he went, "Bye everyone, gotta get the bus home," and off he went. And then we had to start the real Q&A, and I didn't know how to follow that. It was extraordinary. It's meeting those people.
Yeah. And I guess the reaction that you've just described from some of the people, that must be so gratifying to you.
Yeah.
But I've created something that has touched people in a really
Yeah.
healing in a
really,
way, I would
yeah,
say.
it's
to use
healed
that
people
word,
and
yeah.
touched people in a
Yeah.
massive way.
Yeah.
And there's often a part of me that thinks, could I have done more with that play? I wish it had had a full West End run. And people kept saying, oh, you should go to New York and do it. And yeah, I'd like that. Or we're still talking about making an official film. There's a really beautifully filmed version of it online, but like an official film. But I also have to go, I did all those things with it and be pleased with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's other things it could have done, but I
It was
didn't
also
expect
enough the way
it was enough. Like, when is it enough if that's not enough to have someone translating it and performing it in another country, or
Yeah.
have these amazing exchanges with strangers? Like, when are we gratified? Is it always something that's out of reach that we're chasing?
Yeah, and I guess if you actually bothered to drill down into the numbers, a lot of people have seen your work.
Yeah. Like I say, I got messages from all these American gay guys one morning, and they were, "Hey, buddy, saw Riot Act. There was a screening with the AARP. We loved it, buddy." And I thought, what's the AARP? And it's the American Association of Retired People.
Wow.
And I'm only a couple of years out the age range for that, which that was the most shocking thing when I Googled it. And they'd watched it, and it'd been like these thousands of people had seen it in America, and they'd watched it they must have, I don't know what happened, maybe some remote watch party. I don't know how it happened.
That must have put a spring in your step that day.
It did, and I was actually having a really crappy day with everything, and I thought, why am I doing this? What is the point? Why don't I just go and work in an office?
Yeah, and you get that, and
not to say it's not hard to work in an office. I don't want you to get loads of messages that I'm not dismissing anyone's lived experience. I'm sure it's very.
You're not here to live in you're not here to work in an office, clearly.
I'm not.
So should we go on to your third magic?
Yeah, I guess
Can you introduce that to us?
Yeah, I guess it's leaning into the power of queerness, which and what that can mean and what that can do for you. And I really do believe it can be a superpower. I think we have the opportunity to choose how we use our queerness. Some people may not use it in the most positive way, but we have a choice. And I definitely know it's formed me in so many different ways. It's formed my outlook on life. It's made me understand what it means to be an outsider. It's made me understand what it means to be other. It's given me a career as an artist. And I was resistant to it as an artist, especially as an actor. And I felt I was trapped by it.
When did that change? How did that change?
Probably changed when I was working with Ricky in the early 2000s. And then I just basically almost exclusively play gay roles now. And I'm really quite happy with that. I don't believe that playing a straight role for me is something I need to aspire to. I just don't care.
Yeah.
They'll get a straight actor to play a straight role, someone who's more obviously straight. If a gay actor wants to play straight roles, I understand that.
Some people don't. Vice versa? Where are you on that debate? If a straight actor wants to play a gay role, what's your view on that?
I'm not crazy on it in this current moment, and my opinion might change a few years down the line. Yeah. I think queer actors should play queer roles. Yeah. I think that as a gay man, when I'm watching a queer actor in such a role, I can tell the difference. There's another level of truth to it. Yeah. And I know that there are things about being queer that you just can't understand if you're not. Or maybe you could understand with a level of empathy. You could say, hold on, does that mean that if you are playing a mass murderer, you actually have to go into the street and murder someone? But I think that's a really futile. Yeah. That's like Piers Morgan saying, does this mean that I can identify as a penguin? That's not what anyone's saying. What I do find strange is when certain straight actors are allowed to play gay roles, and it's always when they're good looking. That's who the people accept it, when it's a good looking straight guy playing a gay role. It's true, but then there's, what do you guys think about it? Do you guys think any actors should be able to play anything?
I've never really thought about it. I guess I was leaning to people can play whatever, if they're the best suited for the role, then perfect. But I really hear what you're saying about the deeper level of truth that you can bring to a part as well, which there's all that lived experience that is in your cells, in your body, that you just, in your energy, that just translates as an actor, that is more subconscious and more in the invisible thing that we feel when someone is acting, that you is obvious. A gay actor would obviously, or a queer actor would bring a deeper level of truth and depth to a queer role, and probably vice versa. A straight guy would bring a deeper level of truth and clarity to a straight man's role. So yeah, that's a question mark for me.
But let's face it, a queer actor isn't going to be given as many opportunities to play a straight role as a straight role. A straight actor is going to be given to play a gay. So in the name of, even in the name of fairness, when there are limited roles available for gay or queer actors, it doesn't make sense. It seems a bit unjust to have straight actors playing or getting those roles.
Unless they're hot.
Yeah.
Unless they're hot, yeah.
Which is, I've even seen it. There's this really, I know you were just talking about why. There's these headlines that are coming up on social media, and I can't remember the actor's name. He's in The Bear, and it says, new bisexual role.
Yes, I saw that. Jeremy something White. Yes,
Alan White?
Jeremy Allen White, the guy that did the Calvin Klein campaign.
Yes, exactly. He was very good looking, unconventional, but he has a sexiness about him. And also there's so much about queer people's lives that are actually really so complex and multi-layered that it's even hard to explain to somebody. That's why I really loved All of Us Strangers. And I'm just actually reading the screenplay, and as far as I'm aware, there's only one out actor in it. But it worked. Again, it was Paul Mescal, so nobody had a problem with it because people like Paul Mescal. But I don't know what's going on in Paul Mescal's private life, so...
This is true. You're not the same age as me. I know that I'm older than you, but we are of a certain age where the term queer was something... I'm speaking for myself here. It wasn't a term that I grew up identifying with. It was I was gay, and then suddenly I can't remember at some point a few years ago it was more about being queer. Do you lean more into that label of queerness than gayness or being gay?
I would say for me it's like both. I would quite happily say that I was a gay man. I used the term, I was just talking about this yesterday with a colleague. Are we saying queer or LGBTQ+ in this document we're writing? I remember when the word queer came back into usage. I think it was about 2015-ish. But of course, it had been used in the 90s in a more positive, reclaiming kind of way with things like Queer Nation and the nightclub, which I think the nightclub is based on a New York pressure group called Queer Nation. And queer was like an academic term that got used in the 90s. So it's not new in that way. But it went out of fashion, I think, and then it came back into fashion. And now it means lots of different things to different people. I am cautious when I use it sometimes because even like my plays, I'm really lucky. I've got 18-year-olds and 80-year-olds in the audience. And what I don't like is when an older person's experience or problems with that word is dismissed and people are told just, but it doesn't mean that, get with it. Yeah, exactly. And actually, it's a very difficult word. Mostly it's people who are maybe 50s, 60s and above. We're not far off each other, Rob, age-wise. And I was just thinking earlier, we're like a generation who, maybe yourself, Ed, but we've seen like extraordinary changes. I am a child of Section 28. I'm post-AIDS. I was a child when all those terrifying adverts came out. So we've seen like extraordinary changes. Gay marriage and this huge shift. And I also like, because I remember I started going to clubs in the 90s, and so I have like a very idyllic view of the 90s, and I felt there was loads of money flying around and great clubs. But I also look back, and I've only recently started to articulate it and realise how homophobic society still was in the 90s.
Yeah, for sure.
I was in my bubble.
Yeah.
And actually, but I had to be in a bubble. We had to be in a bubble.
Living in London, as we did, is very easy to forget that we were living in a bubble. London, Particularly if you're a gay person back in the 90s, it was living in a bubble. It was, but we thought that the rest of the UK was like that, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
And
also, it isn't. And I also felt that I created my bubble in the 90s, and so it was really gay guys and our girlfriends who now we would call allies, and maybe a few straight guys who they often came via the girls. They were the girls' boyfriends. But like wider society, Section 28 was still in place. There was still lots about HIV and AIDS. We didn't have the legal rights.
Yeah.
People were wary of children around gay men. Still in the 90s, all your peers had not had any kind of diversity exposure in schools or anything. So that really created a different society.
Yeah.
And of course, it's all going back, and we have to be really careful.
Yeah. And so this is for your magic, which I love. So how would you describe that? What is the magic of queerness in your experience? But also maybe expand it. What is the potential for that for anyone who is gay or queer?
It's interesting you say potential, because I'd actually did a play called Future Queer, and it linked queerness and future, and we talked about the potentiality of the future, because of course the future is full of potentiality because it hasn't happened yet, and it says how queerness is full of potentiality because it's so non-linear in a way and can be so many different things. And what were you asking me, Ed? How would I define it?
Yes, for yourself first. What's your experience of it? How you would define it?
Yeah, for me, I think it's made me think out the box. It's made me understand an outsider, understand what trauma may be as well, perhaps understand collective and community trauma, which goes into other conversations about generational trauma for other groups in society. It's given me a sense of humour. It's given me a love of camp things.
Great taste in music.
Great taste in music, yeah, exactly. And that's like when an interviewer said to Liza Minnelli, Liza, why do you think the gays liked you and your mum so much? And she went, because they've got good taste. I thought that sums it up. And also, just don't argue with Liza. It opened up loads of art for me, all these amazing artists, and I had to seek them out. I had to seek out, or I was introduced to them, and it could be anyone from Bette Midler to Gus Van Sant to Bruce LaBruce.
Yeah.
And what else? Hopefully, like fun times and challenges. It's challenging. It's still challenging to be a queer person. It's challenging to grow older as a queer person. You have different sets of worries and joys as well.
Yeah.
It's made me who I am.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I really hear from what you're saying, that sense of freedom that comes with it, right? And that fine line of, okay, it's one of the things that can be very restrictive, but at the same time, when you embrace it, what you're saying is it brings up a lot of freedom, both in the connections you're making with the stories and...
Freedom can be restrictive. As queer people, excuse me, we have a lot of choices. More often than not, we don't have to get the kids up for school at 6:30, and that can have consequences: the partying, the drugs, the freedom, the Peter Pan syndrome. So freedom as well has a flip side. And queers are navigating loads of things that aren't spoken about anymore, because we have to present a very happy, strong front, and we have a game show on TV where there's drag queens competing, and you can even have a drag queen serve you a Prosecco brunch if you want, but that's not the reality for queer people in this country and around the world in many ways.
Yeah, very true.
And people want queerness, and they want queerness wrapped up in a nice pink bow, but
so maybe
it doesn't always work like that.
As a final question on this, how, if you were to speak to someone who is struggling with their queerness, what would the advice be, or what would you say as what would be some words of encouragement?
I would say I understand, and I understand how difficult it can be. I think it's getting more difficult in other ways for young people. So many more young people are exploring their gender identity, and that a lot of the trans and gender non-conforming people I know at the moment are scared. So I understand. I would just say, it will all work out. It will all work out. And just look after yourself
Yeah.
and look after people around you, because we have our own challenges,
Yeah. Also,
and it's okay to be different.
yeah.
You
And
know.
also, you're not alone, and there are resources and there's
Yeah.
help out there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, don't be afraid to be different. I like that.
Yeah.
Embrace it.
It's okay to embrace that. Yeah, exactly. Because for a long time we had to echo existing structures, and that was our way in. But actually, it's okay. You can just be queer as whatever. I was
Yeah.
going to swear then, but I thought
You can swear.
Right. And also
you
bring
can be
it back
queer
to
as
your-
fuck.
Yeah.
Exactly. And bring it back to your previous comments. It does feel like a risk, right? Being for ourselves does feel like a risk, because
It is a risk.
you open up. You're vulnerable.
Yeah,
You know, but the
you
more,
are.
more we can be in that, fuck, this is who I am, but you can like me or not like me, the risk is a little bit, right? But there's
Yeah.
always that bit of, ooh.
There is a risk to get on public transport for many people in our community.
But I do think Gen Z are more emboldened anyway. They are more emboldened to own their identity and
Which
go
is amazing.
through life taking those risks that what we would consider more of a risk. I think they
Yeah.
don't. They accept it as,
Yeah.
or they accept
And
themselves.
Yeah, and I don't even mean a risk, yes, of course, to our physical self, but even anyone revealing themselves, like even in a relationship or with friends, or revealing who you are, being free to be yourself. There's, in my experience, there's always, or often, I don't know many people who don't have that sense of
Yeah.
total fearlessness of being ourselves.
Yeah, and it's very hard for gay men, especially because we're having to put on this front, and do men reveal themselves in that way? In a gay relationship, it's doubled. But when you're talking about like Gen Z, Rob, I think like all those figures are coming out where it's the highest rates of people ever identifying as LGBTQ plus, and it could be because more people identify as bi. But I still love it when I walk in the street and I see a very young gay male couple holding hands, or two girls holding hands, and they're like 21 or something. And once I saw it, I was like, oh, it's a little cute gay couple. And I turned, oh, it's a little lesbian couple. I saw them both in the same street. Yeah, double. And I still think, wow, that's amazing that you can do that now, as we could, but it's just more accepted. And to see 20-somethings getting married, but that wasn't available when I was that age.
So thank you for all of that.
Thank you, guys.
Going to move on to the final part. This particular question we're calling the share moment.
If I could turn back time.
So
I actually don't know anything about this question if anyone's watching. So this is like, I don't even know what the question is. And I certainly didn't expect a share sample.
I'm not sure we
Sorry,
can use
Rob.
it, but we'll try and get away with it.
Should want it.
If you could turn back time and give yourself a piece of advice at any point in your life, what would it be?
It would probably just be, don't be so hard on yourself. Just don't be hard on yourself. It will work out. When I was younger, everything was magnified. Everything was bigger. I always felt I was fighting. People may not know that, but I always felt I was trapped. I had lots of fun when I was young. But yeah, it will all work out. It will work out as it should. Even if that's a painful outcome. You can't control everything.
Nice. And it's true, we do that, right? We put so much pressure on ourselves to, as you mentioned at some point, to make things happen so quickly, or in the right time, in the time that we think it should be happening. And actually there's always a ripe time for it to happen.
And those are external pressures as well. They're coming from society. They're coming from your peers.
Yeah, very nice.
Before we let you go, do you want to tell the audience what's coming up for you, work-wise?
What is coming up? I'm having a break from performing. I haven't performed for a couple of months. So people can just follow me on Instagram, alexis.gregory. I'm sure you'll link to it. Everything will be there. There's some shows in the summer. Hopefully I'll do something before then. Riot Act is online. People can watch it.
Yeah, great.
Are you actively writing anything at the moment?
I am, actually. Yeah, I'm working on producing this new Smoke tour, but I am writing a new project, and I'm also working on some stuff, writing that's not theatre based. Yeah, I am.
Great.
Yeah.
Look forward,
It's,
yeah.
you'd like it, Rob, actually. I have to message you and tell you what it is, but I
Yeah.
can't say what it is.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and let us know when it's out, when you're doing it.
Hmm.
Yeah, do our best to come and see it.
Thank you so
you so
much
much, yeah.
for
Thank you.
giving us your time today
Pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me.
and your mime. Your time and your mime. So there you have it. Thank you again to Alexis for giving us his time and for sharing his story with us. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. Yeah, what did you get from that conversation?
I mean, there's a few things that the one thing that really stood out for me and what I loved about what he shared was that we don't have to wait for permission to do what we love. You know, often we have the tendency to wait for someone to give us a pat on the back, or a sign from the cosmos, or a parent or a teacher to kind of tell us, yeah, it's okay for you to do what you love and what you feel inside is the right thing. But waiting for permission, as Alexis said, is never the answer. I also loved how he really shows and talks about, taking risks is essential for growth as an artist and as a person, and I would say is essential for us to also to live our magic, to be outside of our conditioning and the norm, to be doing what we absolutely love does require an element of risk taking, right?
For me, I loved that he was just so sure at such a young age of what he wanted to be doing in this world, and just stayed so true to that dream of being a performer and being within the kind of world of theatre and performance. I'm always in awe of people that just know what they're here to be doing, and he's a brilliant example of that. So I really have so much respect for him and a little bit of jealousy, because it's not something that I've kind of been, I'd never had that clarity. Up until a certain age I did, I think, because I was very similar to Alexis. I used to love performing as a kid and did it throughout my school, but at some point I decided I turned my back on it, which is a bit of a regret for me. So the fact that he really just stuck with it is, I've got so much respect for him for that.
And yeah, as he said, it was a massive challenge, lots of ups, lots of downs, and including being actually in the business of theatre, performing, acting. And that's also a great learning point, because, in my experience, when we do what we love and we do it as a business, we want to sustain ourselves from it. It is easy, and as Alexis says, it's easy to take the joy out of that. It's easy to lose connection with the love that we have for this thing, or for that natural joy that we get from doing it. And so it's so important to stay connected to that, to why we started doing the thing in the first place.
Yeah, but also he spent however many years, I think he said 20 years, he was kind of, working as an actor. And then there was a turning point for him where he carved his own path. He became a playwright. He started creating roles for himself. He wasn't waiting for the industry to kind of give him permission to act or to perform. He kind of was like, well, fuck you, I'm going to do it my way. And that's what he's doing. And again, that is to be applauded. Not many people have the kind of courage to actually to do that, to carve their own path.
Yeah, in such a way. Yeah, and maybe the final thing that really resonated with me was when he said, for him, queerness is a superpower, and I love that, and it's part of our exploration. Also in the retreat that we're doing in June, right? This idea of being gay, what is the magic of that? Well, of course, there's challenges and there's ups and downs for every single person. And depending on the culture you're in, depending on your family, depending on the conditioning, the background, everyone's journey with it is different. But what Alexis was saying was that there is a superpower in it. There's a magic that, might be a source of strength or creativity or freedom, resilience, self-acceptance. I don't know. I think for every person it might be different. But the idea, just that kind of concept of queerness is a superpower, I think is really juicy, and I really love that.
Yeah, and I love the way you just slipped in a cheeky promotion of our June retreats.
It's cheeky, but it also, yes, I know what you mean. But I'm also now getting really excited because of the people that I kind of, are getting in touch to join. We're getting people from all over the world, different backgrounds, different cultures, different journeys with their identity, with their sexuality. And it's going to be this retreat in June, this Find Your Magic retreat for gay men. I think a really powerful and beautiful meeting and exploration and adventure for 8 days together in Crete. So if you're listening and if you're a gay man who really values connecting with people, sharing new experiences, travel, adventure, being outdoors, but also some time for personal reflection, coaching, moments of inquiry, moments of relaxation and deep conversation with beautiful people, then we'd love to invite you to this retreat we're running in June 20th to 27 in Crete.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You find out more information at findyourmagicretreats.com.
Beautiful. So if you'd like to connect with Alexis, you can follow him on Instagram at alexis.gregory, and you can visit his website alexisgregory.co.uk.
That's it for now. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, and if you enjoy the episode, please do like it, comment on it even, subscribe to the podcast where we get your podcast. That really helps spread the word and the magic. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.